Good afternoon. The time is 5:31 p.m. on March 22nd, 2017, and this special public meeting of the District of Columbia State Board of Education is now called to order. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Mr. Haywood, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Williams.
Present.
Mr. Jacobson.
Present.
Ms. Carter. Ms. Carter. Ms. Wilson-Phelan.
Present.
Ms. Wattenberg. Dr. Woodruff.
Present.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones. Mr. Whedon.
Present.
Mr. Batchelor.
Present.
Ms. Hall. Ms. Hall. Mr. DeRosen. Mr. DeRosen. Madam President, you have a quorum.
A quorum has been determined, and the State Board will proceed now with the business portion of the meeting. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there corrections or additions to the agenda? Seeing no changes, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion being properly moved and seconded, I will ask for yeas and nays. All in favor, say yay.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion is approved. Members, we have two sets of minutes before us from March 1st and March 14th working sessions. Are there corrections or additions to the March 1st minutes? Seeing no changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion being properly moved and seconded, I will ask for yeas and nays. All in favor, say.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. The motion is approved. Are there corrections or additions to the March 14th minutes? Seeing no changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Is there, do I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
The motion has been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say yea.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? The motion is approved. Good evening. My name is Karen Williams, Ward 7 Representative and President of the State Board of Education. On behalf of the members of the District of Columbia State Board of Education, I would like to welcome our guests and our viewing public to our Wednesday, March 22nd special public meeting. The State Board typically holds its regularly scheduled meetings on the third Wednesday of every month here in the Old Council Chambers at 441 4th Street Northwest. Tonight, the State Board will consider approval of a new accountability framework for the District of Columbia Public and Charter Schools. This plan was drafted by the Office of the State Superintendent of Education and is the result of many late nights and much thoughtful consideration of research and public stakeholder input, and most importantly, an overwhelming desire to provide a plan that will have meaningful benefit for our students. In a few minutes, I will join my colleagues in providing my position on this important vote. But first, I want to thank everyone who has been involved in drafting this plan. Your input has made this plan better, and I am grateful. I must also note that the discourse on this plan has been at times discouraging. We owe it to our students to do better. There is no time for personal disagreements over policy to become attacks. We have too much to do. The State Board's work on Every Student Succeeds Act does not and cannot end tonight. We will be working with OSSE on additional metrics on well-rounded education, school climate, and high school growth. These are not available to us right now, but the State Board is committed to ensuring these are part of the accountability plan as soon as practical. This plan is a strong foundation that will continue to evolve through open, transparent, and inclusive public engagement process as it is implemented in all our schools. The State Board does not have the authority to act alone. In the past, we have been obligated to follow the lead of other agencies due to a number of factors, including budget and staffing, but more fundamentally because the statute that created this body, We heard last week from many members of the public that they wanted the State Board to be more active. In order to do so, we need you to work with us and the council to change our statute. Our budget hearing before the Committee on Education is on May 4th in room 412 of the John A. Wilson Building. Please sign up to testify at the hearing and let the council know that the State Board is a vital part of education policy development in the district. A final housekeeping matter, our colleague Ashley Carter is unable to join us in person today. I would ask unanimous consent that she be allowed to participate by phone. Is there an objection?
Is there a what? Oh.
Seeing now, the motion is approved. Before we move to our resolution, I would like to invite our State Superintendent, Hansel Kong, to provide opening remarks. Hansel.
Thank you, President Williams. Tonight, the State Board of Education will vote on a resolution to approve the District of Columbia's State Accountability Plan as required by the Every Student Succeeds Act. I appreciate the board's engagement and leadership on this important issue over the past year. I also appreciate the thoughtful consideration of this proposal, and I urge the board to approve the resolution that will be before you tonight. Throughout this process, we have heard consistently from parents and community members about the value of having a robust set of common information about all of our schools in DC so that they can meaningfully engage in their school communities and make thoughtful decisions about school choices. In addition, having a common system across all of our schools will provide the basis for stronger collaboration and learning across our city so that we can highlight areas of strength to learn from and build meaningful partnerships between schools, regardless of sector. We know that we still have a long way to go to ensure all DC students are learning and succeeding at high levels and are prepared for college, careers, and life opportunities. And this plan is a critically important step forward in that work. I want to thank all of the stakeholders and members of the public who engaged in this process through the more than 70 meetings we held or participated in over the past year, or via the more than 250 written comments we received. I also want to recognize and thank the State Board of Education for your deep and thoughtful engagement on this issue and careful consideration of many perspectives. The feedback we received over the past year and during the public comment period and the views and recommendations of the State Board of Education were key to the changes we have made since the draft plan was posted on January 30th and helped us arrive at a stronger plan. As we developed the original draft plan and reflected on potential changes before the updated version that is before you today, we were very cognizant of the important voices of civil rights organizations during the ESEA reauthorization process and in their ongoing advocacy on the implementation of the Every Student Succeeds Act. Civil rights organizations have continued to express support for strong, clear accountability systems that affirm the need to focus on academic outcomes and high expectations for all students. For example, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights has spoken about the importance of accountability for the achievement of all students and noted in an advocacy guide on accountability systems that while it is important to have multiple pieces of information about how well a school is serving its students, it is critical to know that we know whether the core purpose of schools, providing students the academic skills they need to succeed in the 21st century, is being met. We have sought to hold true to these important principles while also addressing the significant community interest we heard in reducing the total weight on assessment-based measures and prioritizing the weight of academic progress or growth over that of academic achievement. We think our updated plan strikes the right balance in making substantial changes in response to feedback while also remaining focused on academic outcomes. The Council of Chief State School Officers, which works with all state education agencies, recently noted that our updated plan's weight for non-assessment measures is among the highest of any state's plan they have seen to date. We also acknowledge the significant community interest in continuing to explore school climate instruments and measures of well-rounded education. We agree that rich and engaging experiences for all students across a range of content areas and warm and welcoming environments in schools are deeply important. And in our full plan, we have not only included a new measure of access and opportunities to be piloted in 2018-19 and fully implemented in 2019-20, but have also committed to reporting out publicly and to the board on this work. As we noted in our updated plan, OSSE is committed to continuing our work with the State Board of Education and with the public. OSSE will provide updates to the public and to the State Board of Education on progress towards reviewing and amending the accountability system 3 times a year, and will co-host one public roundtable with the State Board before December 2018. Substantive changes to the framework will be brought to the State Board for approval. Examples of substantive changes to the framework include components of the Access to Opportunities metric and the inclusion of additional assessments like science. OSSE will also bring a proposal by the end of the 2018-19 school year to the State Board about the incorporation of high school growth. I recognize that many parents and community members have strongly expressed their interest in and belief in the need for ongoing communications and engagement. At OSSE, we are committed to continuing to improve our outreach and engagement efforts through the steps described above, as well as in the development of our new school report cards. We look forward to continuing our partnership with the State Board in these efforts. I strongly believe that the plan before you today represents a major step forward for DC and lays a critically important foundation in order to sustain, accelerate, and deepen the progress we are making for our students. The updated plan before you today is stronger as a result of your engagement and that of the public. I urge you to lead our city and our schools forward by voting yes on the resolution.
Thank you. For over a year, the State Board of Education and OSSE have been soliciting input from the public, national and local experts, students, parents, teachers, and other stakeholders related to the new statewide consolidated plan required by the federal Every Student Succeeds Act. Tonight, the State Board will be voting on approval of the district's state accountability plan as proposed by the state superintendent. I would ask our ESSA committee chair, Ruth Wattenberg of Ward 3, to move the resolution.
I think it would be more appropriate for someone else to move it, but thank you for offering.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Now the motion has been properly moved and seconded. I will ask Mr. Haywood to read the resolution.
State Board of Education resolution to approve the State District of Columbia's State Accountability Plan, SR 17-6. Whereas in December 2015, Congress enacted the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, which amended the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, ESEA, and built on key areas of educational progress achieved in recent years with the intention of ensuring that all students have equitable access to a high-quality education. Whereas the Office of the State Superintendent at OSSE must submit a state education plan to the U.S. Department of Education that outlines statewide plans for education, including how DC will support specific groups of students, and the state's system of annual meaningful differentiation of all public schools. Whereas District of Columbia law requires State Board of Education approval, requires DC State Board of Education approve the state accountability plan for the district as developed by OSSE pursuant to ESEA, ensuring that A, the plan includes a single statewide accountability system that establishes ambitious long-term student achievement goals, which include measurements of interim progress towards meeting those goals. And B, the statewide accountability system included in the plan is based on, but is not limited to, challenging state academic standards, academic assessments, and a standardized system of accountability across all local education agencies that will be used to hold local education agencies accountable for student achievement. Whereas in creating the draft state plan, OSSE held or participated in 50 meetings with individuals from more than 100 organizations represented. Whereas OSSE released a draft state plan on January 30th, 2017, that outlines how the district will put into action ESSA's requirement about areas including funding, supporting all students, and a school accountability framework, the school's transparency and reporting STAR framework. That includes a number of metrics aimed at capturing multiple measures of school performance, including academic progress, school growth measures, the quality of teacher-student interactions in pre-K programs, access to and outcomes in advanced placement coursework, and others. Whereas OSSI solicited feedback on the draft state plan during the public comment period open from January 30th, 2017 through March 3rd, 2017, including receiving more than 250 written comments from various education stakeholders across the district and comments from the public during a series of community engagement sessions in all 8 wards throughout February 2017. Whereas on March 10th, 2017, the State Board of Education provided OSSI with 10 recommendations for changes to the ESSA draft state plan, which reflected the views of SBOE members after receiving input through its community meeting series, presentations and discussions with PTA and ward education groups, experts, teachers, parents, school leaders, and numerous direct conversations with residents. Whereas OSSI thoroughly considered all of the comments received throughout the public comment period, amended the state plan, and released a revised summary of the state plan on March 15th, 2017 that was responsive to feedback that included the following: a lower weight on academic achievement in the elementary and middle school frameworks, an increased weight on school environment in the elementary and middle school frameworks, a new measure for access and opportunities in all frameworks for the school environment domain that is designed to promote well-rounded experiences for students in engaging learning environments, a measure of growth in student attendance to give credit to schools who are improving students' rates of attendance and addressing chronic absenteeism, and other responsive clarifications. Whereas OSSI did not include a growth measure in the high school framework because the district does not currently have enough years of testing data available, and because students' course-taking patterns, particularly in math, can vary considerably. But OSSI has committed to exploring all options for developing and implementing academic progress or growth measures for high schools in the near future and reporting publicly on progress towards this goal by the 2018-2019 school year. Whereas OSSI has made assurances in their plan for further reporting to the public and the board and approval of substantive changes to the accountability system to the board. Whereas the U.S. Department of Education requires that states are ready to release results in the fall of 2018 using its accountability system and data collected in the 2017-2018 school year. Whereas OSSI plans to submit the state plan to the U.S. Department of Education in April 2017 for approval in order to provide LEAs, schools, and stakeholders with clarity on how school quality will be measured at the start of the 2017-18 school year and provide for effective implementation of the new system. Whereas the state superintendent and members of the State Board of Education have engaged in an extensive period of public engagement, including receiving testimony from the public and experts at public meetings held on March 16th, June 15th, July 20, September 21st, October 26th, November 21st, December 21st, 2016, January 18th, February 15th, 2017, as well as at working sessions held on May 4th, June 1st, July 13th and 27th, September 7th, October 5th, November 2nd, December 7th, 2016, January 4th, 13th, 24th, February 1st, March 1st, and 14th, 2017. Whereas the State Board of Education has reviewed the revised state accountability plan and finds that the plan's accountability system establishes ambitious long-term student achievement goals using measures of interim progress towards meeting those goals, and is based on challenging state academic standards, achievement and growth in academic assessments, school environment, and a standardized system of accountability across all local education agencies that will be used to hold local education agencies accountable for student achievement. Now therefore, be it resolved that the State Board approves the district's state accountability plan as proposed by the state superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. Members, we will each have 5 minutes to speak on the resolution and plan. I would like to begin with the chair of the ESSA Accountability Plan Committee, Ruth Wartenberg of Ward 3. Members, I will hold each member to 5 minutes for your input.
Okay.
Ms. Wartenberg.
Thank you so much. First, let me say I have loved the outpouring of public comment and debate that we have had on this issue. Hundreds of people have attended meetings in every ward. Hundreds have filed comments and completed surveys. One night last November, we stayed here until 9:30 p.m. to hear testimony. Last Wednesday, having had only 24 hours to see the final plan, more than 30 people from every ward braved the cold and snow to testify. Parents, charter leaders, education advocates, all have filed letters with their views. The Post and bloggers have weighed in. Some of us have put forth our views in a Washington Post op-ed, and there have been numerous tweets, and I have gained many followers. And today, we received a letter signed by the leaders of every ward education, every one of the 7 ward education councils with the most students, encouraging us to turn down the plan before us. This outpouring and engagement has been a great success of our board process, and it should hearten us all. Worthwhile policies are not weakened by strong debate, and unanimity doesn't improve policy. It just says there's no more to discuss. I appreciate so much the time and thought that my colleagues invested in the work of our board ESSA committee. We produced 10 thoughtful, hard-fought consensus recommendations. The process pushed us to think more about what matters most and to hear from each other and learn from each other. I wish that process could be replicated across the many people that testified before us and commented so overwhelmingly in opposition to the plan, and those who have signed letters and met with OSSI in favor of the plan. We need a conversation across these groups, not confined within each group. Thanks to the debate and the engagement and changes made by OSSI, the policy has become better. For K-8 schools, the proposal credits how much students have learned slightly more than it credits their absolute test scores, which mostly reflect what they knew when they entered the school year, not what they learned while in it. It's not the wait for growth that I prefer, but it's a genuine shift and a compromise that I appreciate. Other smaller changes, including a pilot on climate surveys and a commitment to add 5 points in year 3 to access and opportunities, were made as well. These are important. I don't dismiss them. I hope they lead to good changes. But for now, one is a research pilot and the other is for a small number of points. In contrast, our State Board of Education recommendations urge new indicators of climate and well-rounded education ultimately count for at least 10% each. The changes in this proposal are not enough. An accountability system should steer schools towards good practices and measure whether a school provides a quality education and grows student achievement. The federal law gives us the flexibility to create such a system, and this proposal doesn't envision it enough. Test scores are a very important part of rating a school, but the entire school rating should not be based only 95 or 95% on just test scores, attendance, and re-enrollment, or at high school graduation grades, which is what this does. As for promoting a well-rounded education, this proposal has no science, no social studies, no arts, no physical education, no citizenship, no foreign language. As for school climate, a school environment that is welcoming, challenging, stimulating, and safe, it is unmeasured except by the rough proxies of attendance and re-enrollment. This is way too narrow. As for growth, as noted earlier, the final revisions give growth a slight priority in the K-8 ratings, but there's no growth measured in high school at all. There's a promise to explore it and bring it back to us in the spring of 2019. The timeline and process doesn't suggest adequate urgency or a role for the public in making important choices about high school tests. Finally, this process, revisions last Tuesday, final public testimony last Wednesday, a final proposal last Friday, a vote today with new comments from major institutions flying in hours ago, along with new clarifications of the latest changes. It's been too rushed for an issue that matters so much. And we as a board, despite many requests, have never seen, except for a couple of examples, models of how this rating system works. We don't know, given the weight of proficiency and growth, whether improving schools will be recognized or not. And last week, the weights changed. We don't know what effect that will have. I can accept, though reluctantly, that the measuring sticks we want don't exist in the form that OSSI wants, and that we can't put these better measurements into place today. What I can't accept is that we don't commit to clear goals for rough weights for including climate, well-rounded education, and high school growth, timelines that suggest a sense of urgency, a public engagement process that will promote and enable a real cross-sector, multi-stakeholder discussion that negotiates these issues, and a process that assures the State Board a continued ability to provide input on and approve new components and weights. Thank you very, very much for all of your participation in this.
Thank you, Ms. Wattenberg. Ms. Wilson-Fallon.
Thank you. I would like to share my thinking related to my yes vote in support of today's plan by highlighting 3 key messages. First, the purpose of the accountability plan is to understand whether our school system is helping students prepare to live a fulfilling life with 21st century skills and knowledge. Second, the plan we will vote on today represents one moment in the process of trying to get this right. And third, public input on educational approaches in this city cannot end here and must go further than we did through this process. I'll share my thinking on each of these 3 points. First, on purpose. The point of this plan, as I understand it, is to provide a litmus test, a snapshot, in terms of how well our schools are preparing students to succeed in the 21st century. We know that success requires a range of skills, knowledge, and dispositions, and that our measures of these elements are imperfect. Recognizing this imperfection, we want to get as close as we can to understanding whether our students are learning and whether our schools are positioning them to succeed in the longer term. We know that the PARCC test is a decent measure of what students are learning and goes well beyond historical standardized tests in assessing whether students are on the path to college or career because it measures a student's critical thinking skills. This is not the test I took when I was a student that largely measured rote learning. This is a test I want my children to take because I want to know what they understand and how they will make connections with that understanding. The PARCC, at least in elementary and middle schools, is the closest thing we have to a measure of the outcome of what our schools are teaching. It is a difficult test to teach to without actually teaching critical thinking skills. All of this said, tests will always be imperfect measures of learning. They correlate closely with socioeconomic status. Coming from a low-income background myself, I personally never did well on standardized tests. I would much prefer a competency-based approach to learning that would rely more heavily on things like student portfolios to demonstrate learning. But the fact of the matter is, we are very far away as a city and in education nationally from introducing portfolio assessments consistently across all schools such that we could use it as a universal measure of school performance. And as a city, the majority of our schools are not yet engaging students in learner-centered, personalized education, which would likely need to precede portfolio assessments. So at this moment, the accountability plan is an unlikely way to influence those practices. Demand from parents, educators, nonprofits, and experts in the field to shift how schools are approaching learning would likely yield more influence. The PARCC at least gets us talking about how to best teach critical thinking skills, and I think that's a very important start. Second, on our point in the process. As this has been said many times by OSSE and the State Board, today's vote represents only one point in the process of this plan. It introduces new areas of accountability like re-enrollment and attendance that are strong predictors of school environment and student success, and it allows us to pilot new instruments like school climate and exposure to science and social studies in ways our current instruments do not. In my 20-year career, part of which was spent in government trying to change systems, and part of which was spent in the classroom as a teacher, it has taught me that piloting new ideas before they are launched and building buy-in for those ideas from those who must implement them, like our school leaders, is the most responsible, effective approach to new tools. The current plan allows for this, outlining a timeline for doing so that is ambitious but feasible. We'll revisit this plan in December of 2018. This might seem far off, but it's actually only 3 months from the first publication of the data that we're talking about today. Similarly, the most critical step in this process will be to design a state report card that reflects the information that parents want, need, and should know in order to make an informed decision about choosing a school for their child, something that's especially important in a city with so much choice. The report cards are a valuable way to communicate not only the state's accountability system, but other information that rounds out the picture of student and school success. I know OSSE is already thinking about how to do this well, and I look forward to partnering with them in this effort. Finally, I want to comment on public input now and ongoing, and I'm going to be really direct about this. Our city must get beyond the point of top-down reform. By top-down, I mean that the majority of our public engagement comes from those who are part of organizations in upper-income households. We've got to find a way for the people most impacted by educational inequity to weigh in on the decisions that impact their children with the highest stakes. This isn't at the exclusion of upper-income families, but in addition to them. By and large, we did not do this in this engagement process. As examples of where we dropped the ball, and I share responsibility in this, most public engagement meetings were held at night, which makes it difficult for those who work evenings on hourly wage jobs to participate. Our materials were wonky and were not universally translated. They were difficult to understand, leading many of us to do the difficult work of correcting misconceptions, which is avoidable if we break things down into ways people can grasp quickly. Finally, our materials were largely distributed electronically, leaving out many people who don't access material this way. We must do better. Over the past few months, I've met with hundreds of residents and have tried to reach families traditionally marginalized by the system. This is including conducting meetings in Spanish and meeting with families at times available to them. At one such meeting, one mother, in reflecting on the initial plan that weighted 80% on academics, said, "We support this plan. My children do not get a second chance to try to get to
Ms.
college."
Wilson-Phelan.
I hear you. "I need to know now whether they are on the right pathway, and I need to know if my school is helping them." Her voice rings in my head tonight with this voice. The stakes are way too high for the majority of families served by our public system. We need to know, with measures that have been tested, whether our system is meeting the needs of our children and putting them on a pathway to have the opportunity and choice in their future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson-Phelan. Mr. Jack Dickerson.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to start by wishing a very happy birthday to our Executive Director, John Paul Hayworth. You have our congratulations and our thanks for your tireless work on behalf of DC students. And I want to thank my constituents for their thoughtful and constructive engagement throughout this year-long discussion on the superintendent's proposed state accountability plan, which is required under the Every Student Succeeds Act. I've received telephone calls, emails, tweets, and have had conversations at the supermarket, ANC meetings, PTA meetings, and the like, and have participated in numerous public roundtables, community meetings, and state board fora. I've heard arguments on all sides, and I appreciate your activism and your passion to do what is best for our children. The dialogue we've engaged in has been critical in informing the board as to what is working and what is not working in our schools. I think many of us have also been frustrated at what is achievable within the state accountability plan and what is not achievable through this plan, but which the board still needs to address to improve school quality and close the achievement gap that has persisted in our city for far too long. The plan before us tonight is not a panacea, nor is it perfect, but this is a better plan because of the board's thoughtful engagement with our families, teachers, students, school leaders, business leaders, and the superintendent's office. This is an incredibly strong, creative plan that makes enormous advances in multiple areas and ensures that the District of Columbia remains a national leader in improving student achievement. The plan significantly reduces the weight of assessments from current levels while still ensuring academic rigor and achievement remain the cornerstone of our schools. The board's work has been instrumental in achieving this reduction and assessment focus and directly addresses the over-testing refrain heard frequently in our discussions. The plan takes on chronic absenteeism directly by making student attendance a measure of a school's success. Additionally, schools with chronic high absenteeism will be rewarded for reducing overall absenteeism. The plan emphasizes a student's growth over proficiency. This improvement was the direct result of the board's advocacy. This plan ensures that schools are safe and welcoming and that schools provide all students with a well-rounded education. For our disabled, LGBTQ, immigrant, and other disadvantaged students, this plan commits to piloting and instituting a common school climate survey. And finally, this plan brings together our traditional public school system and our network of public charter schools under a common accountability system for the very first time. We cannot continue to have two separate education systems and pretend that they are equal. This plan will bring more clarity and access of information to parents and families who are in desperate need and want of information on where their children will thrive. Washingtonians, incremental progress is certainly progress. This is a strong, thoughtful foundation for school accountability that we will build on in the coming years. To that end, working with my colleagues, I intend to offer a resolution at our April meeting that establishes an ongoing ESSA task force that is led by the board that will include students, parents, teachers, school leaders, education advocates, and other stakeholders, including, I hope, OSSI, that will monitor this plan's implementation, conduct community roundtables to continue this rich grassroots engagement, and review the results of the pilot projects created by this plan. OSSI has committed in this plan to bringing improvements back to the board for consideration and approval, and this ESSA task force will hold OSSI and the board accountable to following through with ongoing improvements to this plan. Taking a step back from an historical standpoint, the U.S. Department of Education was created because all students were not receiving the high-quality education they deserved, many times based on race or socioeconomic status. Former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villagrosa says, "Education is the civil rights issue of our time." I cannot agree more. The civil rights community in Washington has recognized the enormous positive impact this plan will have, and over 50 of them have signed a strong letter praising the plan and urging its approval by the board. I encourage everyone to read this letter and to truly understand the transformational nature of this plan for our students and the stride that this will make in helping close the achievement gap. Thank you, Madam President. I yield back.
Thank you, Mrs. Jacobson. Dr. Woodruff.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, Superintendent Kane, State Board colleagues, District Columbia local education agencies, building leaders, teachers, school staff, Ward 4 community members, and DC students and families. I would like to read into the public record why I have chosen to support the DC Every Student Succeeds Act Accountability Plan, and also discuss why I believe ESSA will help us to bring about improved academic outcomes for all our students. In a perfect world, the highest levels of teaching and learning would be present in all of our schools, and we would not be struggling with issues like ongoing achievement gaps across different school populations, and with the need of greater equity in how we provide services, resources, support, and recognition to our schools and educators. In a perfect world, all across the city, we would have high academic achievement and supportive student-centered schools, and there would not be a need for a federally mandated accountability rubric. But we know this is not the case. In states all across America, schools and local districts are struggling with the same challenges we are. Working with students, many of whom come to us far below where they should be in terms of grade level knowledge and skills. Building on skills and potentials of students who are already learning at or beyond their current grade level. Finding a means of preparing all of our youth for the world beyond high school. And importantly, recognizing and rewarding schools that are doing great work with our students and not penalizing, but helping those schools that are struggling. This is the work of our board, improving student outcomes. In order to meet our students' needs in an equitable way, we must identify schools where they are achieving and progress gaps and learn more about strategies that are effective and that contribute to increasing school quality and improve student outcomes. I strongly believe that this cannot be done without the accountability measures that have been included in this ESSA plan. The measures that have been included in this rubric are grounded in sound research, have or will be piloted within our district, and will serve as a comprehensive indicators of student academic growth, progress, and achievement, of strong supportive school environment as indicated by high levels of student attendance and re-enrollment, implementation of well-rounded instructional programs and curricula, and transparent reporting of information on every school to families, educators, policymakers across the diversity of our student population. Having an accountability plan that does these things will help us to recognize schools that have strong levels of achievement, as well as schools that are able to successfully grow their students from struggling to successful, and most importantly, to scale up the most effective practices across every ward in the city. This is how we will end the achievement gaps that are limiting opportunities for too many of our children. This next step of identifying best practices and providing additional resources for teachers in learning that lead to improved student outcomes in all of our schools is what I am most looking forward to as a result of this vote. I look forward to working with OSSI, the Deputy Mayor of Education, and with the school leaders, with the teachers and the families across the district on improving outcomes for all our children. In my view, we do not have any time to waste as we transition into the next critical stage of our work to ensure accountability and greater support for all of our schools. I would like to thank each of my state board colleagues for their interest, engagement, and contributions to the ESSA plan, and I hope that they will support its approval, which will enable us to move into a new chapter of increased school quality and academic success for all of our children. Thank you very much to all of our stakeholders.
Thank you, Dr. Woodruff. Mr. Jones? Do you care to testify?
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening. Our viewing public and our constituents in the chambers this evening. I didn't come with prepared remarks, but I want to say I am the longest serving board member. And I've been lobbied on this issue more than on any issue than that we've encountered since I've been on the board. Our board members, our new board members, I want to commend them because they came in the midst of this decision. But they've done a yeoman's job of digging into the very difficult and challenging data to arrive at a decision. And as far as the lobbying effort, it's been equal on both sides. Some for and some against, and as I said, it's been pretty much equal. But there is a couple of areas that I do have some concerns about. And not one of the areas is not necessarily in reference to the plan, but I believe it's a failure not only on this board's part, but all participants in this city leaders, as far as the outreach is concerned. It has always been my philosophy that people who are affluent, people who are well-heeled financially and well-informed will educate their children. But this effort has convinced me even more that the families who don't fall in those categories are the ones who are left behind. And in my lobbying effort from many groups and individuals, I began to dig back and push back on different efforts. And of course, the ones who have a stake, and as my Ward 1 colleague suggested earlier, the ones who are well-informed and well invested, understand it, and they're prepared to lobby, no matter what side of the fence they fall down upon. But the families who need it the most, we left behind because they don't understand it at all, and that is a fact. I work with the homeless families every week, and they don't understand what this means to them. This isn't tangible for them. And I think we failed them. Not just them, but the families who are uninformed. This system has failed them. We can't expect families to believe there is value in education when our system has failed them previously. You can't find value in something that hasn't been successful for you. So I think we've got to make a better effort at informing the families that what this accountability is about. And in reference to the accountability, I am in support of a common accountability. We need it in this city. and I'm supportive of high school growth measure. I appreciate OSSI making an effort. It's not where I want it to be. However, I'm wise enough to know that there is no predictable, reliable way we can measure high school growth the way it should be. So it would be somewhat irresponsible for me to be too demanding on that effort. I came to this meeting, well, not today, but earlier, I was pushing back and thinking maybe we should delay the vote, table it. But I got to tell you, I think I would be irresponsible to suggest that we should table it. We need to move forward. And no matter what side the vote falls upon, it's incumbent upon all of us to work together to help the families that need it most. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Whedon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let me say that I agree with the majority of the comments that we've heard here tonight, especially those made by Mr. Jones just a moment ago. And I'll own up to the shared responsibility of everyone in this room and everyone that's a part of this debate about the need to do more to those who are not engaged. And I want to thank the entire team at OSSI and the superintendent, as well as my colleagues, for their work here. We all want one system to rate our schools. The park is a strong measure, the closest we have to an outcome. We all want to see high school growth incorporated. We all want to see students engaged in learner-centered education, ensure a strong and safe school culture, and much, much more. I also want to specifically note that we do our parents' communities a disservice when we drive wedges between public DCPS and public charter parents. All our schools are public, and all parents, and I'm one of them with 2 students in my neighborhood schools, want a high-quality education for our students that is well-rounded, that teaches them to it prepares them to succeed in college, in career, and beyond. Unfortunately, that's not a reality here in this country, in our city. 3 out of 4 students are not performing at grade level. Our graduation rate is 70%, and being generous there. We can do better. And we know that many of our students who do not do well are those most at risk, and I don't feel that this plan adequately captures that. As the plan currently stands, 2 of the major components, over 75% of how we're going to rate our schools, are often seen as proxies for poverty: attendance and test scores. In a city where so many of our students are subjected to the traumatic effects of poverty, we need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. As policymakers, I agree we need to set broad goals for our LEAs, and we cannot dictate practice. But we've heard time and time again that what is measured is taught. It's been made clear in the public testimony, in my conversations with LEA leaders, teachers, parents. In fact, one of the major arguments put forth by the LEA leaders for moving forward now is so that they can align resources with what the plan measures. In conversations with LSAT leaders from across Ward 6 as the DCPS budgets were prepared over the last few weeks, I was not asked once, what will help our students learn best? In fact, I was asked, to echo the comments from Ms. Wilson-Phelan, the voice that rings with me, the question is, what's the plan going to measure, and how do we get more resources for that? We're moving away from No Child Left Behind because we taught to the test. Why are we allowing this to continue? I largely agree with my colleagues from Ward 3 and Ward 8, as was in the post, as well as many others have indicated here tonight, about the need for a well-rounded curriculum, climate, high school growth. And I know that OSSI has made a pledge to move forward. I also harbor a deep belief that our re-enrollment measure will unfairly penalize schools that continue the 5th grade when many of our public charters begin middle school in 6th grade. We'll need to look at that. For reasons like this, I think we need to have a clear process moving forward that ensures LEA feedback, public feedback, board feedback. We don't have that. I must oppose the proposal because we don't have a clear public process for incorporating these changes and adjusting the plan as we move forward. Under the plan, we will have only one more public roundtable before December of 2018. After that point, there will be no other opportunities for input on a plan that could last decades outside of the gracious nature of OSSI. The Board of Education does not have the ability to initiate policy. So while I support my colleague, Mr. Jacobson's plea for a committee that will oversee implementation, and I strongly support that and believe the board needs to do that, the results are at the whim of OSSI. And I trust the superintendent and the team at OSSI to listen, but under a different administration, there is no guarantee. We've heard from many of my colleagues tonight about the need to weigh in the future to develop high school growth, to develop and weigh a climate survey and other measures. I understand the need to move quickly, but I don't find it a persuasive argument. While I support my colleague from Ward 5's sentiments about moving forward now, I must respectfully ask that we move to table this resolution now and incorporate those measures and then move forward with something that best serves the community.
Thank you, Mr. Whedon. There has been a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion to table has been moved and seconded. I will ask you all for a roll call vote. Mr. Haywood, read the roll.
The vote is on tabling the resolution. Ms. Williams?
Nay.
Mr. Jacobson?
Nay.
Ms. Carter? Ms. Carter? Ms. Wilson-Phelan?
Nay.
Ms. Wattenberg?
Yes.
Dr. Woodruff?
Nay.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Whedon?
Yes.
Mr. Batchelor?
Yes.
Ms. Hall? Ms. Hall? Mr. DeRosen? Mr. DeRosen? Madam President, the motion fails.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. Mr. Batchelor?
Thank you, Madam President. When I was sworn into this office just a few short months ago, I said that if we believed that the type of support that allowed a kid from Congress Heights to make an improbable journey to this office was necessary to win the future for all of our kids, we needed to demonstrate that commitment, not just in words, but in actions. We now find ourselves at one of those crucial moments where our actions will mean so much more than our often well-intentioned words. The Every Student Succeeds Act gives us a great opportunity to invest in the long-term success of the district students and their families. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the change that we seek, and this new law could move us just one step further in ensuring that all of the district students attend safe, welcoming, thriving public schools, whether public or public charter. For far too long, we have blamed our problems on the overreach of the U.S. Department of Education. But thanks to former President Obama, we finally have a chance of rewriting the failures of No Child Left Behind. ESSA offers a bold new opportunity for the district to move beyond top-down test and sanction-based reforms that have failed to help the students of my generation. But for those opportunities to take root, this government must think big and enact bold accountability standards that empower educators, hold school leaders accountable, and serve the needs of all of our district students, including some of our most vulnerable populations. So while I'm encouraged by the progress that has been made by this body to enhance the framework, my belief is that we can and must do more to bring about the shift in priority and practice necessary to achieve our common goals. Our students simply can't afford a half step. As the only member of this body that represents more charters than traditional public schools, a common accountability system that ensures both halves of my student population get the high-quality education they deserve is my top priority. But if we are to commit to a common accountability system, let us commit to accountability on the things that matter. I've often said that Ward 8 children and families had the most to gain from an accountability system that strikes the right balance and prioritizes the right things. I also said that we have the most to lose if we miss the mark and leave out those things that are hard but necessary to do. For far too long, students and families in my ward have bore the brunt of bad policies and failed promises. And now it is time for that to change. When I ran, I promised Ward 8 residents that I would stand up for them. I promised to fight against symbols of quality and fight for substance of quality. And that is why we must have an adequately weighted metric that holds every school accountable for providing a safe, welcoming, and supportive learning environment for students and families. We must have an adequate weighted metric that holds every school accountable for ensuring access to a well-rounded curriculum with robust and diverse course offerings and enrichment activities. We must have the urgency it takes to do the research and work necessary to include a high school growth metric, not next decade, but as soon as possible, that gives schools credit for the progress they make with their students, not just for how adept students were when they walked through the door. And as the plan evolves, we must commit to meaningful engagement with not just those with the responsibility of executing it, but real, meaningful, and sustained engagement with those who are directly affected, parents and students, and their elected representatives here on the board. We've come a long way with this plan, but in the interest of all our students in every part of our city, we must go farther. The door is wide open for us to not just do what's easy, but to do what's right. When faced with a plan that falls short of our expectations, I've promised the residents of Ward 8 that I would challenge us to do better, and where we fail to, simply say no, or at least not yet. So today I'm saying no, not yet, on behalf of the children and families at Hart and King, Ketchum and Anacostia, at Somerset and Excel, Kip and Thurgood Marshall, who deserve bold investment in improving their learning and their lives. Tomorrow, I'll be ready to get to work once again to challenge all of us in this government and in our schools to not just expect more, but to do more as well. No matter the outcome of tonight's vote, the work continues, and I look forward to being fully engaged in achieving the balance that our children and families desperately need and deserve. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelor. Mr. Haywood, would you read Ms. Carter's?
The remarks of Board Member Ashley Carter on the ESSA vote, March 22nd, 2017. Today, I vote to approve the proposed D.C. State Plan for the Every Student Succeeds Act put forth by the D.C. Office of the State Superintendent of Education. The Every Student Succeeds Act, which was passed with bipartisan support in 2015, aimed at getting accountability right, especially in areas where NCLB failed. I have spent the first 3 months of my term on the board working tirelessly learning the plan, engaging in public discussion around the city, and submitting questions regarding specific areas of the plan related to ratings, testing weight, and climate. After listening to public school and expert input and testimony over the past several months, the original plan was revised in several areas. This revised plan put forth today effectively combines views of the entire city. Our city is diverse, so our schools and collaboration is essential to move forward with one plan for the various schools in our city. I believe this plan does that. Revisions to this plan may and will be made in the future as we work towards implementing it and collecting more data. However, I believe careful consideration was applied to the crafting of this plan, and the current weight to our testing scores is appropriate at this time. DC is on the forefront of this new act, and submitting a plan for the first review period allows our urban district to effectively prepare in goal setting and strategic planning for its first implementation year. I support the plan being forwarded along to the U.S. Department of Education and look forward to its approval.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. Last but not least, I like to start by thanking our stakeholders, parents, teachers, and education advocates for their insightful, thoughtful, and helpful input during this process. My inbox has been stuffed with emails, texts, messages, and letters full of information on what we should do and how we should do it. I assure you and my colleagues I have looked at and listened to them all. Our ESSA committee chairperson, Ruth Wattenberg, has held at least one meeting every week since we started this process. She has demanded the full participation of all the members of the board. She has fought hard to have all our ideas incorporated into the new ESSA plan, but because before ESSA proficiency was the only measure of success we have, the other metrics we are looking to achieve and count do not exist. So we cannot build the ideal accountability system today. Saying this, I feel compelled to vote for the proposed state ESSA accountability plan. On Monday and Tuesday, many state board members had the honor of attending the conference hosted by the National Association of State Boards of Educators. Of course, the topic of this conference was ESSA. The focus on the, because every state in the union has to submit a plan, and every state in the union is wrestling with what type of plan to initiate. What we learned at this conference were great ideas, but with the implementation of these great ideas, most states have not yet developed any plan to implement them. Neither has the District of Columbia. But Washington, D.C.'s plans was introduced as an innovative model. So while we are not there, the SBO and OSSE has learned a great deal from the first round of public engagement, and we vow to do better the next time around. And I hear you say, right, I hear you, but we vow to be more involved and have more stakeholders from across the city involved in our next process. The plan we are voting for tonight is not ideal by any means. There is still much work to be done. We would like to have school environmental surveys, more weight on high school growth, and other untested measures of achievement. But that's the problem. These criteria, in many cases, have not been developed across our educational system and therefore cannot be used in this iteration of the ESSA plan. And looking down the road, even if we delayed the vote till September, they could still not be implemented in this iteration. OSSE has removed 10 points from the profoundly rated, the proficiency rating, reducing it from 50 to 40. No, from 40 to 30, I'm sorry. These 10 points have been set aside for the inclusion in the school matrix climate. Most of our schools, both DCPS and charters, have weighed in favor of this ESSA plan. I am a product of DCPS, so were my parents and my grandparents. We are all educators. Therefore, my reason for serving as a Ward 7 State Board of Education representative was to assure the same high-quality education that prepared me and my parents and our graduates for college, career, and beyond. As an elected official, if you don't trust me to fight for you and for your right to participate in this process, I will not be voted for in my next election. But if you trust us today, by the next election cycle, you will be able to measure how much the plan has grown and how much better all our students are progressing, and we will be able to continue our work knowing we have accomplished something that has not existed before in this city. Educational equality across the sectors for the entire city is my goal. Thank you. Thank you all for your comments and your insight. The motion is on the resolution to approve the District of Columbia Accountability Plan. I will ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Haywood, please call the roll.
Excuse me. The vote is on SR 17-6, the approval of the State Accountability Plan. Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Ms. Carter?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson-Phelan?
Yes.
Ms. Wattenberg?
Nay.
Dr. Woodruff?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Whedon?
No.
Mr. Batchelor?
No.
Ms. Hall? Ms. Hall? Mr. DeRosen? Mr. DeRosen? Madam President, the motion is approved.
The resolution and the accountability plan is approved. Thank you. With no further business before the board, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
That. And thanks, Karen, for your nice words.
Thank you. The ayes have it. The public meeting of the District of Columbia State Board of Education is adjourned at 6:34 p.m.